Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tonic podcast. I'm your co-host, Drew, with my buddy and co-host, Alex. Earlier this week, we talked about the Iran strike, and we wanted to get that out quickly because it was a hot topic, and we felt it was really important and to discuss and to be in tune with. But we did also want to do this episode at the beginning of the year, and this is kind of like the 2019 in reflection and what our predictions are for 2020. And we're just kind of going to go over some big things that happened and kind of reflect on 2019 and what that will mean and how that will affect the future and what we think will happen. So Alex, to start off, give me a couple of your big 2019 slammers.
So basically 2019 to me was an interesting year because, see, my problem with the new year, and this goes to politics, goes to well-being, this goes to health, this goes to eating habits, is that everyone wants to look at one year in particular, single it out, and say everything changed. You know, in 2018 it was a great year because I only ate vegetarian, or 2017 it was a great year because I finally started my blog. It's like people need a black and white definition of what a year is, right. And for me, actually, 2016 was the big year. Okay, that was the year that we saw a giant populist shift in politics. We saw a realignment of voters in the United States, and the United Kingdom, and France, and Spain. And honestly, since then, it's kind of been the same, changing, obviously, in some specific ways. But since Brexit and Trump, I think we've just seen an evolving trend. And to me, that biggest trend is that I think the West is continuing to see a lashing out of two views of liberal democracy. I think it's the liberal view of majority rule, where 52% dictates what happens, and the illiberal idea of rule by the minority. And I think this is a kind of a constant struggle we've been seeing. And we have seen this at times with the Brexit vote and also with Trump winning in the Electoral College while still having way less than 50% of the vote. And this seems to be a constant test of our institutions. And so in the West, I think there's, as we've talked about on the podcast, there's a constant issue of democracy's strength. And it's growing now in Spain and France. And also over 2019, I think we saw everyone was getting more entrenched in the culture wars, as I call them, right. Between the metropolitan areas that attract large numbers of university graduates and the provinces that favor more traditional values. And, Bernie Sanders and AOC and all these progressives, they're the, like it or not, they're the elitist metropolitan leaders. And Trump is the man of the traditional. He may not be a conservative, but he's the defender of what the conservative image is. And so I think that's, for me, the big takeaway from the West. Obviously, there's other issues, but I'm focusing more on the West, at least for what I'm saying right now. But to me, 2019 was just an evolution of existing division.
Right. I think that existing division manifested in the impeachment. Right. You had the House of Representatives impeach the president, Donald Trump, the third time it's happened in U.S. history. We've talked about this on other episodes if you've been listening many times, and I'm sure you've heard it all. But that's just a good example of the entrenchment, right? Everyone knew that the House was going to impeach Trump. Everyone also knew that the Senate wasn't. That is why Nancy Pelosi is withholding sending it down to the Senate. So we don't know when that'll happen. But we kind of also know the result of when that does happen, when she does send it to the Senate. We all know the result, unless it's after the 2020 election. But so that's a good example of that. Like you said, the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is still based out of large metropolitan areas. Bernie Sanders is from Vermont, but he's most popular in large metropolitan areas among young college students.
Right.
Trump still has a solid base of support in the Midwest. There has been times where his calls for impeachment dipped above 50%, but they dipped back down. He's been pretty steady in his support, which is in the low and mid 40s. So which is again not great, but it hasn't changed much in 2019. And then, like you said, in the general for the West, I tend to agree with your analysis that, again, like we had the the referendum in the UK that was over, not the referendum, but the election that showed that most of the UK still supports Brexit and is behind Boris Johnson. And even with that change in prime minister, it still seems like the UK is set on leaving the EU, and it's gonna happen at some point. So we're still kind of waiting to see what happens with that, but it's still set in its ways, and it wants to leave.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think you summed it up well. Is that it is interesting to see where impeachment's going to go. Obviously, we'll talk about that down the road. And going back to kind of what we were talking about is how the status quo is kind of continued. There's a great foreign policy article that I think we've both gone over, and it kind of talks about this a little bit. The fact that as much as I think the media and people on social media and people at your Christmas dinner table all think that the world is falling apart around us. And in some ways, things are changing. Like the Australian fires and the Amazon fires, I think are a sign of an apocalyptic world we are going to inherit and already living in. But in some ways, the world's not changed much. NATO was heavily under attack by both Trump and even Emmanuel Macron, French president. Both have criticized it, but NATO's survived its 70th birthday mainly intact for the most part. Iran, since Trump's ill-advised maximum pressure campaign, things haven't particularly worked out well, as we've talked about with Soleimani. But basically, we've had confrontation with Iran since the 80s. So to be honest, the status quo has kind of been maintained. Globalization, I think this is the part where I would think we have backtracked a little bit, which I tell people going forward into 2020, nations are really going to have to grapple with defending their national pride and rights, but also openness. And I think that's the biggest issue where we're struggling right now, is how to balance, an open economy with protecting national rights. So globalization, I think, is something that's on the hot seat. That's another issue for another topic. But, moving on, the Middle East, unfortunately, is still the Middle East, right? That Afghanistan report that came out shows how brutal of a quagmire we are in.
Yeah.
And Russia and the U.S. are at odds. And, I think we've highlighted it so much more just with the potential links with the Trump administration. But, honestly, our relationship with Russia has not changed.
Right. Russia still tries to destabilize the West as much as possible. And the United States still supports nations like Ukraine, even with that whole scandal that came out about withholding military aid. They still eventually got military aid, $500 million. And so, we still support countries that are going against Russia's destabilization ideas. So, yeah, you're right. In a weird way, not much has changed. It's almost like not much has changed, like you said, about the calendar year. Not much changed from 2018 to 2019. But a lot has changed in the last 5 years, right? It's how you frame the time. But I did want to go back to the environmental turmoil, because I think that the Amazon fires and the Australia fires and figures like Greta Thunberg are starting to wake a lot of people up to the environmental issues. And not that people have I think a lot of people know about climate change and are worried about it, but haven't had a tangible thing to really see the effects of. And I think these fires are some of the first huge things that we see that are very visible and more tangible to realize whoa, this is going to become a lot more common if we don't start doing something about it. So I wonder how that will affect in the future, but I think it's bigger than people realize, that these fires and the environmental turmoil we're starting to really see, because I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. As geopolitics is the same, for the most part, domestic politics are the same. But it's true, is I think where the biggest change is like you said, the climate. This Australian fire, I personally can't even fathom how big the fire is. I was looking on a map. They showed how big the fires in Australia are compared to the United States, and it was literally a map consuming all of the United States and southern Canada. These fires are humongous, and the amount of wildlife and infrastructure and human lives that are slowly being lost, I think, is something that's irreplaceable.
Yeah.
And we've for me the big story of 2019 was the rush of billionaires and everyone to support the rebuilding of the Notre Dame, which I actually defended at the time because I think that the Notre Dame is a cultural structure that is so important to people for different reasons. To Catholics, it's the sign of the Catholic Church. It's this powerful symbol of Western Catholicism. And to me, as a non-Catholic, it's a symbol of the beauty of art. It's the beauty of architecture. I mean, I think what people don't realize is that churches are not just religious. They are what the people of the time spent all the money of art and architecture to put into.
Sure.
So I understood why people were rushing to build this structure. But then you see these fires where the natural beauty, the natural world is getting destroyed. And to me, that's the story of 2019, I guess, is no one's rushing to defend Australia or the Amazon.
Right. I mean,
and it's scary.
The United States has sent firefighters over there, but it's not like this. You're right. It's not like this, billions and billions of like outpouring of billions of dollars of charity to help this out. It's more like we're all just kind of watching on the sidelines. And yeah, there was a professor from Sydney, I believe, that estimated. Of course, it's a rough estimate. I don't know how we would ever know, but she estimated that the wildlife affected by this fire is in the like 500 million range of animals being affected by this fire. Multiple fires in Australia. And on top of that, the Amazon was getting deforested at an incredible rate. I think it's interesting to have that dichotomy where we also have the global economy is pretty strong, and the U.S. domestic economy especially is very strong. We've had a strong stock market pretty much all year. It's been a bull run, and it's interesting to have that happen there, and you have a bull run stock market that seems to be unaffected by geopolitical turmoils. But then on top of that, you have an Earth that is suffering some serious wounds. And I'm not saying that like you can't have both. It's just an interesting 2019 is just an interesting year that we might need to reflect on, like how much is a strong stock market worth if it's unsustainable.
Well, I think what you sum up right there is kind of the side effect of the Trump administration. I think that was what Trump ran on, and I guess arguably he's been more successful than most recent presidents in delivering his message, which was an isolationist, protectionist, booming national economy. But in the way of it, have we lost our hearts? Have we lost our soul? And I mean, it's not completely related, but I, as a conservative, ask some of my more Trump conservative friends, I ask, give me one reason to vote for Trump other than the economy. No one can give it to me. And
right.
I think it's for me, the biggest issue of the United States of right now is that, yes, we're successful, but have we lost our heart and soul along the way?
Yeah, well, and again, I don't want to sound like a doomsday sayer, but how long does the bull run last? Because it's not going to last forever. That's just a fact. It's just not going to last forever. I don't know if it's going to crash in 2020. I don't know if it's going to crash in 2030. I don't know. But I do know that a strong economy never lasts forever. If you look back at, investment experts and pundits in 2006, 2007, they said the economy is really strong. We're on a bull run. And then a year later, it definitely wasn't. So, we never really know how long the strong stock market is going to last. It is interesting that it seems to be unaffected by things like the China trade war. You'll see a dip here and there because of a Trump tweet. But really, if you look at the trend, it's been solidly going up since the dip I think it was in February, or it might have been the end of 2018. But there was a dip down, and it's already recovered that and increased. I mean, we've had record S&P and Dow numbers multiple times in the last quarter, which is crazy. But I think part of that has to do with the Trump tax cuts kicking in, right? There's corporate businesses have more wealth to use and spend and to buy back stock, and I just wonder how long that'll last, and also if a strong stock market isn't. I know for sure it's not the only way to diagnose an economy, and so I wonder how the rest of the way to diagnose the economy are doing. Unemployment is very low. And so the economy is very strong, but again, I wonder how long that'll last, and if things like the Chinese trade war really blow up, how quickly it could all fall.
Well, I mean, I think on what you said is I think it's a valid point. Is I mean, a booming economy isn't the only diagnosis of how the country's doing, and
Right.
I mean, that foreign policy article I shared with you, I think we were reading, is that, I mean, it says back home, the United States continues to deal with deteriorating infrastructure, a protracted opioid epidemic, a greater danger from right wing domestic terrorism than from foreign jihadis, seemingly endless school shootings and other forms of gun violence, and a polarized and gridlocked political system. And to be honest, I mean, I think all this points to a very similar thing, is that Americans are lonely, sad, and isolated. So yes, the economy may be good, but like to me, at least from the books I've read and the podcast I've listened to, I mean, I think Americans are lonely and sad, and that's why they go to their echo chambers on social media. And so, I mean, to me, that's one of the like another big story of 2019 is I think isolation has caused even more division, and the economy is booming along, so no one wants to stop and ask why.
Right. I don't think this was a year of unification. I think this was a divisive year. I think the last few years have been divisive years. And this is
Mm-hmm.
and like I guess kind of the theme of our 2019 reflection is it's been a lot more of the same. We're continuing to see divisive cultural war.
Mm-hmm.
We're continuing to see a strong economy, but we're also continuing to see um, a, uh, a a wounded country underneath it, right? So
Uh-huh.
now again, I don't want to sound like for those listening, like a strong economy is good, right? I'm not trying to
Yeah.
I'm not trying to just be like a negative naysayer. A strong economy is good. It's a good thing, and it's a great thing that we're in this strong of economy. And that kind of brings me into how I want to shift into the next part is kind of our predictions for 2020. Now, let's be very clear, people. These are just predictions. We don't know what's going to happen. And in fact, I kind of learned my lesson after 2016 because I'll admit I thought Hillary Clinton was going to win, and that's what I told people, and I was wrong. I was wrong. So as far as just kind of a caveat is, I don't usually make predictions nowadays, but figured for the podcast it'd be kind of fun just to force ourselves to think of what could happen. And it might be fun to look back after 2020 to see what we got right and what we got wrong. But the reality is this is just all our opinions. We don't know what's going to happen. And don't hold it against me if I get a prediction wrong.
I'm going to hold it against you. I'm going to hold it very
Yeah.
against you.
Because I have learned my lesson from 2016. But I think my big one, my big shocker, we're going to go right out the gate with the big one. I think if the economy does stay strong, Trump will win the 2020 election. What do you think about that, Alex?
I completely agree. I mean, I think a lot of independents and maybe even Obama Trump voters. I mean, you vote with your wallet at the end of the day.
You vote with your wallet. Well, you vote with your wallet, and I also think I think it comes down to the states, right? Like there's only a few states that really decide this election, and they are the ones that more vote with their wallet, right? Like California votes Democrat all the time. Even
Sure.
people that are very wealthy and that might benefit from tax cuts still pretty much go Democrat in California, unless you're in like Orange County, and even Orange
Right.
County's purple. But yes, I think people that are in manufacturing jobs in the Midwest and or like suburban Virginia where you have maybe $1 million house and you're getting a benefit with these tax cuts. Yeah, you're going to go for Trump. And historically, if the economy is good after the first term of a presidency, historically they always get the second term.
Right. Right. And I mean, it's true, and I think this is Trump's election to lose, but I think, I mean, according to The Economist, still Trump only has a 46% chance of getting reelected, which I think tells you more about the moral voice of the country and the division in the country. But it's true. And The Economist also reports that Michigan and Pennsylvania can be expected, which I think is obvious, to return to the Democrats,
Mm,
especially if you have a ticket with Biden. And this will make Wisconsin, which is whiter and more conservative, the most fiercely contested state in the country. And let's be
mm,
honest, Wisconsin is very conservative. And also, it's very working class. And I mean, to be completely honest, I mean, the numbers are quite staggering with what Trump has done. I mean, I don't want to say directly Trump, but what his presidency and his administration has succeeded over is that black unemployment is high, women unemployment is high in general.
Or you mean
And
you
so
mean
it's a strong
employment?
case.
You mean employment?
Yes. Yeah.
You said
Did I say unemployment?
yeah, 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 yeah. No worries, no worries.
Sorry, yeah, my bad. So I meant black employment is high, women employment is high, and in general employment is high. And so I mean those are strong numbers to run off of, especially in a Midwestern state that has struggled after the Great Recession. So
Right.
I think you're right, Drew. But
I mean, look.
We'll have to see because.
Oh, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. But I'm just putting a stamp down for the fun. I mean, obviously there's so many factors, but I think just for the sake of the podcast and just for fun, if the economy stays good, Trump will win. That's historically how it goes. Now, again, we have a very ahistorical, it's a very strange presidency we have now, and I don't think Trump can really be compared to many other historical presidents. But
Right.
if we took history as a lesson, if the economy stays like on the course it's going, Trump will win. Now let's do another little scenario. I also think that if Joe Biden is the Democratic candidate, Trump will win. Now, you had just mentioned that Pennsylvania and Michigan are more likely to go blue if Joe Biden is the candidate. And I do agree. I think that is a valid point, right? He has that blue collar Democrat, that kind of blue dog Democrat support. But I also think he suffers, and he would suffer from the same problem that Hillary Clinton had, which is he's not that inspiring like Obama. Like Obama was inspiring. People came out to vote for Obama that maybe didn't vote before. Whereas Clinton, people didn't come out and vote for Clinton. Trump won a few states not by beating Romney's numbers before, but just by Hillary Clinton not matching Obama's numbers. I think Biden might suffer the same fate where he doesn't really inspire people and have a clear, poignant message that people can rally behind, and they won't come out of their way to vote for him. On top of that, he's pretty prone to awkward scandals. Now, there's a lot of time between now and the election, but I just think that he's kind of a blasé politician, and he's more of the status quo that people rejected in 2016. So I don't think Joe Biden will win if he's the candidate. But we'll see. What do you think about that?
I have to full-heartedly disagree with you.
Wow. All right. Good.
Yeah, I actually think that you're discrediting, you're underestimating Mr. Joe Biden a little bit.
Really?
See, the thing is, I don't think I think you're right. Is that his message is underwhelming, and he could suffer from the same issue that Hillary Clinton is. But at the same time, I don't think because he has Obama's name next to his. And see, the thing is, Hillary Clinton was the one who went against Obama at first, spoke badly about Obama, and then was put on the ticket, and then Benghazi happened. Joe Biden doesn't have any of that. He has a strong record, a lot of years of experience, and still Americans find him quite likable. Also, I don't think people care about his national TV blunders that much. I really don't. And so I have a theory, which I'm going to put out, and please don't criticize me, people, if it's wrong. But Joe Biden has been talking about a one-term presidency, about running one term to defeat Trump. And there's been some whispers I've heard about a potential Biden-Buttigieg ticket. And I think it's kind of fascinating to a certain extent, because if he declared Buttigieg his running mate early on, it could be interesting. Because basically the critique on Buttigieg is he doesn't have enough actual big government experience. Yes, he's the mayor of a small town, but it's not enough.
Right.
And so what happens if he runs with Joe Biden for years? Biden steps down. Now Buttigieg has the experience of a vice president and then runs for the ticket against whoever it could be in 2024. So my theory is that Biden announces a running mate early on. It's Buttigieg, and they defeat Trump in 2020.
That would be pretty intense. It would be. Look, Biden-Buttigieg would be a strong ticket. And he won't be popular among progressives, but progressives will come out and vote for him anyway,
Right.
because they don't want Trump to win. So that's a good point. That's a good point. But we'll see who's right. We'll flip the coin. That's exciting.
Let's make a bet. Let's make a bet. Let's go, Vegas.
Yeah, right. Gosh, man. I think there is actually a website out there where you can bet on elections and politics. Not encouraging that to our viewers. I don't think it's entirely legal. I've just heard through the grapevine that it exists. But I think it's a thing. I mean, people bet on anything, right? People gamble on, how far the slinky will go down the stairs.
Interesting. Okay, so I want to move. I want to take that 6-hour flight to Europe from New York, and I want to land in Germany for a second, because I think with all the chaos right now, no one. And here is my 1-minute prediction on what's going to happen in Germany, which no one talks about Germany. You're probably saying, Alex, why are you bringing this up? Because I think it's huge. I think Germany is going to be one of the countries that starts the next recession.
Ooh.
Mainly because they're having huge structural changes in there, which are going to be compounded by cyclical flutters. German car makers are struggling. They're struggling extremely awfully. Chinese are not buying their cars, and electric vehicles have completely destroyed the German car manufacturing machine. And low public investment, which is constrained by self-imposed fiscal straitjackets, has mortgaged Germany's future to its present. And so basically, I see Germany having a lot of economic issues going forward. And so everyone talks about Brexit. But I think in general, Europe is going to have an identity crisis, and that all starts in Germany. Drew, what do you think?
All starts in Germany. Well, I didn't know about that. The German auto manufacturing sector is going down the drain. That's really fascinating and scary. Germany has always been known as the industrial heart of Europe, and it's always been the other way around. It's always been Greece going down the drain, and Germany has to come in and bail them out. So it'd be really scary if it was the other way around. Wow. So yeah. So. Okay, I mean, Germany going down. I think that, combined with the Brexit, that might have a pretty big downturn on the global economy. Yeah, that's a big one. I don't know enough to make a prediction on Germany, but that's a big one I'm going to look out for. My prediction was that Brexit will have an impact on the global economy, but probably not one that's huge. It will be big for the UK, but I think that the United States and China will be okay. They'll be fine based off of Brexit. I don't think it'll be that big. It might have a little bit of a downturn, but if anything, that might be even the correction for the bull market we've been seeing anyway. I don't know. Germany though, that's scary. That's
no. I think that's a fair. I think that's a fair point about Brexit though as well. I think that's a very fair point about Brexit. Obviously, I think Brexit could be two paths. I really think that, you could be right. But I also think depending what happens with their Scottish independence referendum and other internal issues, it could get really ugly really quick and could affect it. But I think you're truly right. I think it could be the help to kind of maybe slow down the bull a little bit. Also for me, living in Spain, I'm curious about what's going to happen in Spain in the next 4 years, because they have been in a political quagmire. They've had 4 elections in 4 years. The socialist government is kind of stuck. They've won the last 2 elections, but the far right has sucked moderate right voters away, and the socialist center cannot really find anyone to pact with except for the far left. And with the Catalonia issue, which the right in general does not want to talk about or acknowledge, someone is going to need to basically come to the table and talk to them. And right now it looks like no one wants to talk to each other. It's one of the issues I always say about parliamentary governments, is that they have such a large plurality of parties, is that no one wants to talk. They can't form a coalition, and then it's back to the voting ballot. So Spain's going to be interesting. They need to form a budget, but this is going to require a multi-party compromise, and they can't do that. And so I think Spain is another kind of nail in the coffin of the EU. it'll be interesting.
All right, so big predictions. Economy might determine the election. Joe Biden may or may not have a good chance. The EU is probably going to fracture more. Interesting. Interesting. Well, folks, I would love to hear what your predictions are for 2020. And if you want to, and if 9 months down the line you want to come and comment on this episode and rub it in our faces, whatever you got right, go ahead and do that. No, but in all seriousness, we'd love to hear from you and hear your predictions and what you think about domestic policy and foreign policy and what going forward. I think it's going to be a fascinating year. I'm always excited for election years. They're always historical, and it's fun to see. Just being so interested in it. Any other thoughts, Alex, before we get out of here?
No, I'm with you. It's gonna be it's gonna be intense. It's gonna be fun to see. I'm gonna be following politics every day again, and yeah, I think you're right. It's gonna be fascinating. Let's see what predictions come out, and I'd love if people can tell us what they want us to talk about in 2020. Comment.
Yes.
Say they want us to talk more about China. Say they want us to talk more about Russia. I don't know. Tell us.
If you even have some obscure thing you want us to deep dive into and maybe learn more about, let us know. We'd love to hear from that. And last final prediction before we get out of here is Packers take the bowl, hopefully.
I am hoping, man. We shall see. I'm sorry about your Eagles, but I'm glad you are cheering for my boys now. They can't seem to beat. Well, they have their 13-3, but their record to me feels more like 9-7. Go Pack, go!
Go Pack,
Let's
go!
see what happens.
All right, everyone, take care, and thanks for tuning in once again.